Minister, welcome back to the House.
Thank you so much.
There are warnings of chaos, the breakdown of social order, as we just heard, the risk of famine. What did you learn about the scale of the need when you visited the Rafah border?
I learned firsthand from, I interacted with and spoke to a number of senior officials who had crossed over from Gaza to give me updates on the situation on the ground. And the information paints a really, really dire picture of what's really happening. Families and individuals are going without food for days. There's very little food getting through. There is hardly enough hygienic products, as well as shelter material and blankets and things like that are getting through, medicines and so on. The picture is very dire. People are in a very, very desperate situation, and they're doing desperate things to survive, such as resorting to eating a sort of bread made out of animal feed. And even that has run out. They've run out of that in northern Gaza. And, the scale is bad overall, but in northern Gaza, it's even worse. And that's what I've learned. I've also learned while there, both in Egypt and in Jordan, about the sheer volume of international humanitarian assistance, supplies of food, water, medicine, and other essential supplies like blankets and shelter materials stuck in these distribution points, and not enough aid is actually getting through that. So there is a big disproportionate difference between the amount of aid that is pre-positioned in the region, especially in Jordan and more so in Egypt, and the very little that's going in, plus the huge demand and the desperation on the other side in Gaza.
So Canada did increase its funding, $16 million to the World Food Program, at the same time that you froze funding to UNRWA. And we will talk about UNRWA in a minute, but I want to stay with this situation right now. If the World Food Program is pausing its delivery of aid to northern Gaza, citing the security situation, the breakdown of social order, is there anything the Canadian government can do at this point to help these people who are on the brink of starvation?
And that's precisely one of the reasons that I'm in the region, because we're advocating for more access. We're advocating for more volumes of aid to go in through the existing ports of entry, but actually to also open up more ports of entry for international humanitarian aid. And we've been doing that.
Any signs of success?
So in addition to that, we're also looking at the possibility and the feasibility of actually making airdrops into Gaza. This is something that the Dutch government, as well as the British government and others, have done in collaboration with the Jordanian Air Force. It's something that we're seriously considering and looking at the feasibility of doing that and what it would take to do that, because we have to do everything that we can to avert mass starvation in northern Gaza and beyond.
Okay, I'd like to talk about UNRWA for a minute now. Obviously, one of the primary agencies helping Palestinians. You paused that funding, Canada did, as other countries have as well, because of allegations that some staff were involved in the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. I'd like to understand, is it possible that the Canadian government will permanently end funding to UNRWA?
I don't want to prejudge the results of an independent investigation into those very serious and disturbing allegations. But let me start by saying that the reason we implemented a temporary pause on any additional funding to UNRWA is because we value the work of UNRWA. We value the fact that this UN agency has a long history of providing crucial services to Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, and in Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. We value their networks, we value their presence, we value the fact that they provide these really important services, education, health, and so on. We have partnered with UNRWA on the Gaza response, but these allegations have to be dealt with. And what we are saying is, while we implement this temporary pause on additional funding, the UN family has to conduct a transparent, independent, comprehensive investigation to deal with these allegations. And they're doing exactly that. They've assured us that they're doing exactly that. And we will obviously wait for the results of that investigation with the hope that a comprehensive, transparent investigation will return with a result that will provide us, hopefully, with the confidence to continue to work with UNRWA in the future.
This question of the temporary pause, as you put it, to UNRWA funding, it's animating the political conversation in this country. And as we approach Ramadan, the National Council of Canadian Muslims and a number of prominent mosques have signed an open letter saying that members of parliament are not welcome in mosques unless they call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, they demand the restoration of funding to UNRWA, and condemn what this group describes as Israel's war crimes. What does this tell you about how much your government's policies on this conflict have alienated a large swath of voters?
Well, look, this is obviously a reflection of the frustrations that people have with respect to the conflict. And when you look at the loss of life, when you look at injuries and displacement that has been caused by this conflict, we prioritize the protection of civilians. Beginning with October 7th, the people who were targeted and killed and injured by Hamas, a terrorist organization, as well as innocent Palestinian civilians that have paid a really high price in terms of deaths, injuries, and displacement. Our focus has always been and will continue to be the protection of civilians, calling for the respect of international humanitarian law, really advocating consistently and repeatedly and strongly for a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire, so that the conflict can stop, so that international humanitarian workers and health workers can do their job throughout the Gaza Strip, and more aid to go in. I totally understand the frustrations. I'm frustrated with the level of deaths and injuries.
Is it reasonable, Minister, to be asked to stay out of a place of worship? Is that a reasonable response for members of parliament?
Look, I mean, I'm not too, people are frustrated and they'll make statements based on that frustration. I totally understand. What I want to sort of respond to that is by saying, look, I'm frustrated as well. And our government is frustrated with the level of deaths and injuries. And we're doing everything that we can together with like-minded countries to push for an immediate ceasefire and end to the conflict, so that more aid can go in, all the hostages can be released, making sure that, there is freedom of movement for humanitarian workers and health workers, so that we can, do what we can to help those who are injured. I saw people who had been evacuated from Gaza who were being treated in Egypt, men, women, and children who had lost limbs, who were dealing with horrific injuries, and we know what's happening on the ground from humanitarian worker reports showing that we're on the brink of mass starvation. We have to do everything that we can to prevent that, including looking at the feasibility of Canada engaging in the airdrop of food, medicine, and other supplies by air over Gaza. And we're in active discussions to enable us to do that. And that's precisely the conversations that I've been having that I've had with Jordanian officials in Amman, Jordan.
Thank you for your time today, Minister.
Thank you.
Ahmed Hussein is the Minister of International Development. We spoke with him on Thursday.